All right, Bree, thank you so much for sitting here and talking to me about your experience with discrimination in real estate. So first, tell me, how long have you been in real estate?
I got my license it was 7 years ago in September. So I've been representing buyers and clients that would like to sell their homes for, like I said, yeah, going on 7 years.
Okay. And in your experience as a realtor, where do you see young Black people moving, kind of our age? Where do you see them moving these days?
Well, I know that there is a huge influx of very successful young Black people coming to Houston, which is very exciting. It actually varies. I'm seeing a lot of influx in the suburbs. I think maybe the pandemic brought that on. It's not as necessary for people to come into their offices as much. So people were trying to get more bang for their buck. I've seen an influx in places like Cypress, Katy, Humble has had a huge increase in Black youth. Fifth Ward is going through a restructuring. I know there is a gentleman that is doing a project called Buy Back the Block, where he is very focused on empowering and educating young Black youth on whether it be first-time home buyer grants or making sure you're getting the best loan terms. Fifth Ward is a big influx of young Black professionals.
That's cool. That's good to hear. So I know we were talking earlier about your current case that you have going about discrimination. Tell me more about that.
Well, I would like to say that I've in my 7 years of being in the industry, I'd hate to say that discrimination doesn't exist. Unfortunately, I've witnessed it a lot with representing my buyers or listing clients, whether it be loan officers asking for a little bit more documentation than I would typically see, appraisals coming in a little bit undervalue based on where you're located. I just have always been in a position where if I am operating in the best interest of my client, I notice the discrimination, but I kind of have to, alleviate things, not make my client stressed out. Again, always do what's in their best interest, which is getting them that home. But I'd be untruthful if I said I wasn't a witness to discrimination before. However, this situation is a little different because it was me personally. I just kind of a little bit of history. I was going through a divorce. I have a son that's recently diagnosed with autism. So I am looking for a rental property at the time. And my financial situation is a little bit unorthodox. So just to give you a little background of the situation, I submitted a showing request, which is normal. Typically you would go see the property first. Once you're interested, then you would follow up with the realtor saying, hey, seen the property, I would like to go ahead and apply. I know that we're in a very competitive market right now. And I was in a situation where I was trying to find a home quickly. So along with my showing request, I let the realtor know that I would be interested in also having an application. So I sent my photo identification along with, my request for the application. And I explained that if all goes well with the showing, I would like to, proceed with applying. I explained at that time, my financial situation is a little bit unorthodox. My son had recently been diagnosed with autism. So when I was working for a corporation, they provide you with a W-2. That's going to reflect, what you're getting paid through an employer. In addition to that, I have my investment company and I had recently received an inheritance. So I had kind of explained that there's an array of things that you can provide to prove your income to a potential landlord. So I kind of had to, give her the background. Hey, if you're looking at my W-2, that may not reflect that I make 3 times the rent amount, which is typically the norm of when you're applying for a property. So all of this is relevant because out the gate with my ID and my ask for the showing or for the application, my showing request was denied, which is a little abnormal because you have to put it in the system, the availability. So if for some reason it's denied, that's usually followed by an explanation like, hey, I know it showed it was available for this time slot. It is unavailable because. So I was like, that's a little strange. Throughout the process, she had been very standoffish, very hard to get in contact with. I didn't want to think that this was the case, but again, from me having this experience, I was starting to kind of feel like maybe it was something that she saw from my identification, which I obviously am a Black woman, that was making her a little bit standoffish. So I asked a friend of mine to submit a showing request as well, the same means that I did. She was immediately responded to within an hour. And she had indicated to her, hey, property's not available right now. The tenants are currently moving out, but it's available from this time slot, which is the normal thing that you would do, normal business practice for a showing request being denied, which was done to my friend, but not myself. Right. So in this process, I'm still waiting. She hadn't gotten back to me. I had to request her broker, and only until I had requested to speak to her manager, since I hadn't gotten a response on either my showing request or my application that I submitted, she finally did get back with me and explained that my application had been denied based on what I had explained to you, my W-2. And I said, okay, well, I'm not sure if you remember, I'm the girl that you had explained about my situation. I had recently received an inheritance. I also have a side business, which is inclusive of a W-9. I said, if you're looking at just that, it's not going to reflect that I financially qualify, but these means, and you're more than welcome to speak to my financial advisor. Come to find out, she never calls my financial advisor. I don't even think she looked at my other financial documentation to assess that I did in fact make more than 3 times the income. Mm-hmm. So, I followed up with her. I was like, after that explanation, I was like, hey, I'm not sure if you had spoken to my financial advisor, so on and so forth. And despite all that, my income would have proven with the documentation I provided that I make more than 3 times the income. But there are situations where landlords are leery of non-traditional income makers, so on and so forth. So I went above and beyond and I explained, hey, would you be comfortable with, can you speak to the homeowners and see if they would be comfortable with me paying the 1-year lease term in full, right? So you as a landlord, let's say you're renting your property for a year. Unless the candidate has like some type of background that you're concerned about, as far as a background check, criminal history, right? Not your ethnic or religious or so on and so forth background. Somebody offering the full lease term is an ideal situation, you would think, right?
Definitely.
So I send that, I put that request out there. She responds and says, the decision has been made, move on.
Okay. So you offered to give her a year's worth of rent before you even move in, and she denies you. She tells you that the reason you got denied the first time was because of your finances.
Was a technicality. So she says that my W-2, which was only one part of the documentation I provide her, did not prove that I made more than 3 times the rent, which in my application, I explained that document. I realized that you're requesting that, but that's not going to reflect that I make 3 times the rent. Let's say you're self-employed, right? A lot of people have different financial circumstances, right? If you as a landlord want your candidate to make more than 3 times the rent, then you'll ask them to provide documentation. Some people don't have a 9-to-5 job, so they're self-employed. They'll provide a bank statement that is proof of your income, or they'll provide, a tax statement. So there's several different things that you can provide, and it's kind of dependent on the landlord. But for the most part, these documents that they're asking for are just to prove that, hey, you are financially able to pay the term of the lease that you are wanting to sign, essentially. So if you as a applicant are offering your landlord the full lease term, you would think that would negate any concerns on the documentation that you're providing, which in fact did show, if she looked at everything that I sent her, that I do make well beyond what your financial requirement was. So in this situation, it's either, I feel like we're being discriminatory.
Yeah. So about that, so the lady that's renting it, you say that she's the owner and she's the one renting out the property. What is her nationality?
So her last name appears to be she's Hispanic descent. And I will say that the friend that I had submit the showing request just to see if she would get a response was also her last name was of Hispanic origin. So they have Hispanic or Spanish last names.
Okay. Well, so what is your next steps with this case?
So right now, at the time that this occurred, which is in late August, I submitted a complaint to the Texas complaint division for licensed realtors. And I literally just got a follow-up from them last week where they are, based on the terms that I provided, they are going to proceed on, basically they determine if you were discriminated against based on protected classes like race, marital status, things like that, disability, which I could have fallen into a couple because I have a son with autism. So if you were looking at my employment history, again, I stopped working at a job that provided me that part of my income because of my son with autism. So basically, they did think that I had a premise on the race, since she was aware of my race, and there is proof that there was different treatment provided to someone of different ethnicity. The case was filed and they are moving forward. And I just got that news literally 3 days ago. So still waiting to hear back, but I at least am aware that they are moving forward on the information I provided.
Okay, well, thank you for sitting with me, Bree, and explaining this to me. With your experience as a realtor, it sounds like discrimination is just a part of the job, unfortunately, and you're facing discrimination with the landlord. Are there other portions, because buying a house takes a lot of steps? Would a Black person have issues throughout their process outside of the landlord?
Like I said, I've seen, unfortunately, discrimination in all respects, whether it be if I'm representing a client who's selling their home, or there is something that is necessary called an appraisal if they're trying to get financing to sell their home. I've seen people of African-American ethnicity get a lower appraisal value. I've seen loan officers in situations maybe ask for a little bit more documentation than I would see from someone who is not of African-American ethnicity. Like I said, I've always, this was different for me because I tried to kind of put my blinders on, if for lack of a better word, because it wasn't in my best interest to call them out on that discriminatory practice. I kind of had to do what was in the best interest of my client, which was getting them into that home. So to call them, and it's a stressful and overwhelming situation for my client. So for me to call out, hey, they shouldn't be asking you for that additional documentation, or I think your appraisal value isn't a little low. And in retrospect, I look back on that and it's hard for you to speak up in those situations. And I was leery of pursuing this because, we kind of just take it as, oh, we live in Texas, we live in the South. It's something that we've become, unfortunately, like a norm to. And I would hope in my pursuing this, that this is a step in the right direction and holding people accountable for not treating people fairly and not, working in the practices that we have to study and take an oath that we're abiding by, and representing people to find a home and build generational wealth for their family. So yes, I hate to say that I have seen it, and for lack of a better word, it's kind of become a normal thing. I hope that I'm starting to see positive changes and, people holding these people accountable. So I hope that, with steps like this that I'm taking, that we will see changes and this won't be the norm.
Well, thank you so much, Bree. I really appreciate you sitting here and talking to me about your experiences with discrimination and how it relates to the real estate market and buying a house and getting Black people in better environments. So keep up the good work. Good luck on your case. Keep selling them houses to young Black people. I appreciate it. Whenever I graduate, I'll call you and you'll get me in my first condo. We'll see what's popping.
Absolutely. I got you, cousin. Well, I appreciate you letting me share my story.
No problem. Have a good evening.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.